tell me, how does a woman know that she has miscarried?
It's different for everybody. So
Mhm.
if you were someone who just missed that period, went out, got that pregnancy test that's now positive, it may honestly be nothing more than having a next period that might be heavier. For those that get beyond that, you might have anything from spotting to brownish discharge to a full-blown period to heavy bleeding with clots. A lot of that will depend on the timing, how many weeks post that initial last period that the miscarriage is occurring. And that's really scary for women, right? Because when you are pregnant and you, whether it's through that home pregnancy kit or a doctor's office diagnosing that for you, the minute you get the spotting, the bleeding, all hell breaks loose. You're like, oh my God, I must be miscarrying. But the flip side is also true. You can have those same symptoms and still go on to have a 9 month, fully vested pregnancy and a beautiful baby at the end of it.
If a woman miscarries, does that mean she's going to have a harder time having a baby?
Not necessarily. So the first time it happens, it just could simply be bad luck. It's not because, oh my gosh, I had that one drink that I wasn't supposed to have at that party. It was because, I sat in that hot tub that I shouldn't have done. I think it's so painful when women tend to blame themselves when they honestly, it's nothing to do with anything they did. If it happens a second time, yes, you're a little bit more on edge. That is the time where if it's happened, and technically, we say it has to happen 3 times for us to really go through that, but we also understand the emotions with it. So many of us will say, all right, listen, 2 is enough, right? Now there's a little bit of an established pattern. Let's do a full physical exam. This includes a pelvic exam. There are some very basic blood tests that you can do that can detect problems with your immune system. These are very easy things to do that are non-invasive that can be done right after that second miscarriage. Now, again, if you get, God forbid, to that third, then you can really get into what I call more invasive testing. I think at every step of the way, we do have armament that is appropriate to reassure people, and that's what we should take advantage of. But I'm also not in favor of saying, let's do everything, because sometimes it's more invasive and completely unnecessary.
So, are there things that cause miscarriage? What happens?
Absolutely. So there are things that are definitely what are the cause of miscarriage, and yet there's still a lot of unknowns about miscarriage. So first of all, what I can tell you is that about 1 in 8 pregnancies will end up in miscarriage, right? That's a wow. That's a pretty significant number. And what we also know, if I could just take us back for a moment, is because we now understand and learn about pregnancy even earlier than we ever would have. In the past, you missed a couple periods, you went to the doctor, they did a test, and then, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant. Now, the minute you miss that period, you can go out to your local store and you can get that kit, and boy, you can figure out whether you're pregnant or not. The not so great thing is that as nature takes care of itself, many women in the past would not even have known that they were pregnant, right? They would have had a heavier than usual next period. Well, it is what it is. While in fact, it could have been that they were pregnant, and that was what we call in our world a chemical pregnancy, which means truly the egg and the sperm came together, they were fertilized, but then that did not end up being an embryo that implanted in the womb and started a pregnancy.
And if a woman has miscarried, what happens? What happens next?
So if a woman has miscarried, key in this, I can't emphasize this enough, is you need to be having that conversation with the doctor. So if you're miscarrying, it's important for your obstetrician to first and foremost ensure that that is indeed what has happened, but then follow it up to make sure that all the contents in the womb have actually come out. Because what can happen is you can have the bleeding, you might think you're done, and then several days to weeks later, you might bleed again. Sometimes it can be excessive bleeding, which needs to have intervention. So it's important to talk to your doctor, who will take a good history, who will provide you that reassurance, or indeed provide you what you need to do moving forward. Okay.
One of my biggest pet peeves is that so little is known about miscarriage. And I always think, Why?
So I don't think it is because of the lack of the conversation, but because people internalize and it becomes so personal for them, it takes away the very point pieces of miscarriage that we really need to have more conversation around, right? And I think a big piece of this also, and I've certainly seen this in patients over the years, the first question that comes to the mind is, what did I do? How is it my fault? What did I do? And if we can change that narrative to first and foremost, it's absolutely nothing you did. And I think that's the most important piece. We can start to open the conversation more about how we can talk about it and talk about it in a sense that allows us to educate everybody.
Great information. Thank you.
Welcome.